Hello, I'm Susan Woods of Susan Woods Nonprofit Solutions, and I thank you for your time. In today's tutorial, I'm talking about how to report donations to the IRS using the Form 990 return. Again, how to report donations to the IRS using the Form 990 return. Before I get into answering that question, let me answer this question. What are donations? According to the IRS, donations are contributions of money or goods to a qualified 501c3 nonprofit organization that can be subtracted from taxable income. The donor does not receive anything in return for the donation. So let's talk about this point just for one moment. If you make a donation, if you give money or if you give goods to a qualified 501c3, meaning an organization that has a current 501c3 nonprofit status, then you can subtract that donation from your taxable income. That's the appeal to most people who give money to nonprofit organizations. Their desire or their goal is to not only help the nonprofit achieve its goal in providing services in the community, but also to be able to reduce the taxable income. And the IRS allows you to donate up to 50% of your taxable income. So, what gain or what benefit do you derive from that? Well, if you have $100,000 in taxable income, and then you reduce that taxable income in half to $50,000 by donating to 501c3 nonprofit organizations, then you only have to pay taxes on the $50,000. So that's the benefit that most people seek when they donate to nonprofit organizations that are qualified 501c3s. The nonprofit organization, on the other hand, benefit from donations because they don't have to pay taxes on the donations. So when qualified 501c3 nonprofit organizations receive donations, that's tax-free money for them to use toward providing community services. But bear in mind that when you donate to an organization, you cannot receive anything in return for that donation because essentially you've already gained the benefit of the donation. So that's what donations are. And this is per the IRS. Now let's get to the question of how to report donations. You have to report donations when you receive them in your 501c3 nonprofit organization as a part of the revenues generated for your nonprofit. You report donations and all other revenues to the IRS using the appropriate Form 990 information return each and every year. You should not skip years in filing the appropriate, and the word appropriate has a clear, I will share what appropriate means in just a moment, but you have to submit the appropriate Form 990 information return every single year, even if you don't receive any donations at all or any revenues at all. Let's say that you don't generate any revenues because let's say that you put a pause on offering services. So you're not offering any services, therefore you're not generating any revenues. You still have to file the appropriate Form 990 information return annually. The Form 990 is the IRS's primary tool for gathering information about tax exempt organizations and providing information about legal and compliance requirements. You see, when you download the appropriate Form 990 information return, you can also download the instructions to walk you through the steps in completing the Form 990. And I highly recommend that you do that because the instructions not only tell you or not only guide you through the steps of filing or completing the Form 990, you also have a lot of additional updated information about legal and compliance requirements that are spelled out in the instructions. So whenever you download the appropriate Form 990 for your organization, also download the instructions because there's a lot of valuable information in the instructions that pertain to that fiscal year in which you are filing. All Form 990s in the top right corner of the page will have the fiscal year in which you are filing 2024, 2023, 2022, and so on and so forth. What are the types of Form 990s? Form 990 types. There are three major types. I'm sorry, five major types, but three types that I work with: the Form 990, the Form 990 EZ, the Form 990N, the Form 990 PF, which stands for Private Foundation, and the Form 990T, which is taxable. Now, I'm going to explain in just a moment how you know which Form 990 to use, but these are the five types of Form 990s. The Form 990, the Form 990EZ, the Form 990N is also called the e-postcard, the Form 990 Private Foundation, and the Form 990 Taxable. The Private Foundation and the Form 990 Taxable, I don't deal with at all. I just wanted you to see that there were five types. Taxable means if you have unrelated business income that exceeds the amount allowable by the IRS, then you have to pay taxes on the excess business income. But again, the private foundations and the taxable, I don't really talk about. I just wanted you to know that there are five. So let's get into how do you choose the correct Form 990 for your nonprofit organization. Which Form 990 to use? Again, we have the types, and then I'm going to share the gross receipts, and then I'm going to share the assets. And these variables are what allow you to determine which type of Form 990 you should use for your nonprofit organization. The first type is the Form 990. The Form 990 is used when you have gross receipts of $200,000 or more and when your assets are $500,000 or more. So you use the Form 990 information return when the gross receipts, donations, fundraising proceeds, grant funding, when all of the revenues equal $200,000 or more, and when you have assets like vehicles, furniture, equipment, supplies, maybe a building, anything tangible that you have that has a value of $500,000 or more, then you use the Form 990. You use the Form 990EZ when your gross receipts are between $50,001 up to $199,999,000. And when your assets are less than $500,000, then you will use the Form 990EZ. You use the Form 990N or e-postcard when your gross receipts are between $0 and $50,000, and it doesn't matter about the assets at this level. Now, let me emphasize one thing here about the Form 990N or e-postcard. You see, I included zero. I intentionally included zero because, like I said earlier, even if you generate zero revenues, you don't make any money from any source at all, you still have to file the Form 990N e-postcard. Because if you don't, then the IRS will revoke your status. The reason the IRS requires you to file a Form 990N or e-postcard with zero revenues is because they have to have an accountability from you that you are telling them, I didn't make any money. I didn't generate any revenues at all. This has to be in writing. Once upon a time, prior to 2006, the IRS has said, okay, well, if you didn't generate $50,000 at least, don't even worry about it. Don't tell us anything. Don't bother us. But then you can imagine how many people were jumping through that gigantic loophole. People who were generating more than $50,000 and saying they were not. So they closed the loophole and made it mandatory for you to report zero revenues if that's the case for your nonprofit. When are the Form 990s due? When do you turn them in to the IRS? The Form 990s are due based on when your fiscal year ends. Your Form 990 is due. Remember this. This is a rule of thumb. Your Form 990 is due 5 months and 15 days after your fiscal year ends. 5 months and 15 days after your fiscal year ends. So this is the calendar, or this is the table that shows you if your fiscal year ends on January 31st, then your 990 is due June the 15th. 5 months, 15 days after the fiscal year ends. Let's go down to December because December is the most popular fiscal year end month. Because most people use the calendar year, which is January through December, as their fiscal year end for their nonprofit. So if your fiscal year ends December the 31st, then 5 months, 15 days later is May 15th. That's when your 990 is due. Now, of course, you can submit your 990 before May 15th. You don't want to wait to the last minute and try to submit it then. You want to go ahead and get it in, but that's the due date for that fiscal year end. So again, this table shows you exactly when your Form 990s are due based on when your fiscal year ends. Don't miss these dates. Don't miss these dates. Here is your warning on why you shouldn't miss your dates, your due dates. If you fail to file the appropriate Form 990 information return for 3 consecutive years, the IRS will automatically revoke your nonprofit's 501c3 status. You will receive a letter in the mail saying that your status has been revoked. Past tense, because you did not file in 3 consecutive years. Okay? That's very serious. For example, if you didn't file in 2022, 2023, or 2024, you can expect to receive a letter any day now. Okay? Any day after May 15th. May 15th of 2025 passed, probably a couple days later, you'll get a letter in the mail from the IRS saying your status has been revoked if you haven't filed in 2022, 2023, or 2024. May 15th is your deadline if your fiscal year ends December 31st. As a result, you will have to complete the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption all over again using the correct reinstatement option. There are 4 reinstatement options that you will have to read and learn and determine which option is best for your nonprofit organization. And you have to pay the processing fee all over again. So revocation has consequences. Again, you're going to have to complete the application again. You're going to have to choose the correct reinstatement option, which creates research on your part. And then you have to pay the IRS processing fee all over again. So the key is don't lose your status. File every year. Another disadvantage to losing your status is this. When you lose your status, the IRS updates your records, online records, to reflect that you don't have a status anymore. So when people go out to vet your organization for investments and they see revocation, they're not going to give you any money. You can easily go out and look. It's a very easy process to check the status of nonprofits, and it will have revoked and the date it was revoked and the date in which they posted it on the IRS website. Now, when you get reinstated, you go through this process of completing the application again, choosing the correct reinstatement option, and paying the IRS processing fee. When you do those 3 things and you get reinstated, congratulations. But unfortunately, that revocation date and posting date will never be removed from your record. It will have those 2, revocation date, posting date to the IRS website, and then it will have the reinstatement date. So a potential investor will still know that you were revoked at some time, and they may still question why were you revoked. And a lot of times people are not going to go through the trouble of investigating a nonprofit. They would just go to the next one that has a clean record. So again, the consequences of revocation are very severe. don't get revoked. You can avoid that. You can avoid revocation by simply filing a Form 990 every year. So, in summary, per IRS guidelines, you must do these things. Include all donations on the Form 990 information return each year on the gross revenues. Provide a donation receipt to people who donate more than $250 for their records because they want to turn it into with their Form 1040s as a tax write-off. Now, if you want to, you can provide them with receipts for any amount that they give, but the IRS mandates that you give them a receipt for $250 or more for their records. And then last, file the appropriate Form 990 annually, even if your nonprofit does not generate revenues. File the Form 990 annually. So these are the guidelines per IRS. Now, I want to say that sharing information about how to report donations to the IRS is just one of the 15 strategies that I teach in my new nonprofit survival guide. My comprehensive grassroots nonprofit survival guide includes 15 essential strategies to help your nonprofit thrive despite funding cuts. I'm sure you've heard about the funding cuts from the federal government and how it's having a negative trickle down effect on nonprofit organizations. Well, in this guide, I share information just like I shared about how you can still survive despite the funding cuts. And one way is to learn the rules. It's not necessarily all the time about money. Most of the time, actually, it's about following the rules and being able to survive during these turbulent times. So I do have a survival guide, and again, it's imperative for all leaders of nonprofits to diversify their revenue streams to sustain the services provided in the communities. And again, it's not all about revenue streams, it's about learning the rules as well. This new guide teaches you how to implement 15 essential strategies to generate revenues for your nonprofit organization. I have a pre order sale. I'm finishing up the publishing, if you will, of this guide. It won't be ready until May the 31st. So you can pre order this guide if you choose to for $35. The regular price is $50. If you pre order it, then by May 31st, then you can save $15 off of the regular price. Also, if you pre-order the guide, you can reserve a free 1 hour strategy session with me on the phone to discuss your specific concerns about your nonprofit organization and how to create a sustainability plan for your nonprofit. So again, this is my new guide, and it includes information like I shared with you about how to report donations. Okay, a lot of good information. If you want to order the guide, you can scan this QR code and it takes you to the link to order the guide. Pre order it by May the 31st so you can save $15 off the regular price. I am Susan Woods. I've been doing this work now since 2003. Working in the nonprofit sector, I have practical hands on experience that I include in every one of my lessons. Something in the lesson comes from my own personal hands on experience. Okay. I started a nonprofit organization myself since 2003. I have a second foundation that I need to add to this slide. So I have a charitable organization and a private foundation. So again, I have experience with setting those up and operating them. I have nonprofit consulting services by which I complete the Form 1023 to help people earn 501c3 status, to either start or reinstate nonprofits. I've earned nonprofit management certificates, as you can see here, and I'm also a 3-time graduate of Winthrop University in Rock Hill. But my passion is helping grassroots nonprofit organizations succeed. That's my passion. That's something that I really enjoy. So, again, I encourage you to invest in my new comprehensive grassroots nonprofit survival guide, in which I share 15 strategies to sustain your nonprofit organization despite budget cuts. More information is pinned in the description. Thank you so much for your time and have a great day.